Welcome back. We're going to finish our polynomial unit to end first semester. So the last couple things we have left is division of polynomials, and then we'll talk a little bit about some graphs. So we're only going to focus on one type of division for polynomials, and that is long division. There are some couple of other cool ones. But this one will work always, and you'll also use it for some other kind of graphing if you go on to pre-calculus or calculus. So long division to divide polynomials. As a little bit of review, right, because you haven't done long division since, well, you learned it in elementary school, but we're just going to do a quick little review of how long division works, because it's the exact same process, just with more complicated equations, variables, exponents, things like that. But the process stays exactly the same. So if we were dividing 875 by 6, the 6 would go out in the front, and then you do 875 would go inside the division. So remember that we only focus on one number at a time here, right? So we ignore the 7 and the 5 to begin with. How many times does 6 go into 8? Or what do we multiply 6 by? And that would be 1. Once you find that number, then you actually multiply it. So 1 times 6, and that's going to line up under here. So I do 1 times 6 is 6. That lines up under here. And then we subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2. And I bring down the next number. And we do that process over and over and over again, but it's those same couple of steps that we continue to repeat, and I may run out of room. So then we do it again. How many times does 6 go into 27? What can I multiply 6 by, right? The biggest number I can multiply 6 by. So 6 goes into 27 4 times. That goes up on top. So that's step 1, is figure out what I multiply by. Step 2 is to actually multiply it. 4 times 6 is 24. And then we subtract. 27 minus 24 is 3. And bring down that next number. So then the last thing, what do I multiply 6 by to get 35, or to get as close as you can, because you can't get exactly. How many times does 6 go into 35? Would be 5 times. 5 times 6 is 30. That goes underneath. And then we subtract. We would get a 5. So the remainder is 5. And this remainder actually, if we were doing some of the other things in polynomials, the remainder has of a huge consequence. So first of all, the fact that it has a remainder tells you that 6 does not go into 875 evenly, which means it is not a factor. There are some problems where it simply asks you if it's a factor, and that means, does it go in evenly? Is there a remainder when you're done? So we, however, when we write this, are going to write 145. We are not going to write the R5, remainder 5. We're not going to write them that way. We're going to write plus. You can't see it down there, but there were 5 left over out of how many? Like 5 left out of, we were dividing by 6. So there were 5/6 left over. So we're going to write our remainders as a fraction like this. So let's see if we can apply that same process down here to now this giant mess, right? Use long division to divide p of x, which is this big, long polynomial, by d of x, which is x plus 3. So we're going to try to follow that same process. So the x plus 3 goes in the front. And then this whole thing goes on the inside. X to the third plus 5x squared plus 7x plus 9. And we're going to talk about this in just a minute. But this has, both of them need to be in standard form. So they need to be in order of exponents, highest to lowest. And the one on the inside cannot miss or skip any exponents. So this is one of the biggest things that people overlook and mistakes that people make. And I'll show you a little bit more when we get down to a problem that has it. But so the highest exponent's 3, and then 2, and then this is a 1, and then a constant. It doesn't skip over any exponents, which is really critical. So when we go to figure out this number that goes up here on top, what do I multiply? We only look at this first term for this part, and we're only going to look at this first term for this part. What do I multiply x by to get x to the third? So their coefficients are both 1, right? I don't need to multiply by a coefficient. This is x to the first. This is x to the third. I need 2 more x's. I need an x squared, because x to the first times x to the second, when you multiply, excuse me, you add exponents. When you're multiplying, you add exponents. So x to the first times x to the second equals x to the third. Once you find your number up here, remember the next step is that you multiply and put it underneath. So when I multiply this x squared, I'm going to multiply by both of these terms, and I'm going to line them up under here. X squared times x to the first is x to the third. So I'm going to line that up under the other x to the third. X squared times 3 is 3x squared. So I'm going to line that up under the other x squared. So we multiply and then we subtract. X cubed minus x cubed, that's 0. Those are gone. And then 5x squared minus, we're subtracting, minus 3x squared is 2x squared. And then we bring down the next term. So I'm going to bring down that plus 7x. And you have now done one step, one complete step. It is that same step that we're going to repeat over and over. It's that same process right there. Okay, so we go back to this first term right here. And now we only focus on the first term here. What do I need to multiply 1x to the first by to get 2x squared? So this is a 1. This is a 2. What do I multiply 1 by to get 2 is 2. And then this is an x to the first, and this is an x to the second. So I need to multiply it by another x. Because when we multiply x to the first times x to the first, we add exponents, and that would give us the x squared. So we have that number on the top. Remember that step 1 is to find the number on top. Then we multiply it by both of the terms in the front. So 2x times x is 2x squared. We're going to line them up under here. And 2x times 3 is 6x. And then we subtract. 2x squared minus 2x squared cancels. It will cancel every single time if you've done it correctly. If it doesn't cancel, you need to go back and find your error. 7x minus 6x is 1x. And then we bring down our 9. Okay, so we got one last one. We look at the first term and we look at the first term. What do I multiply 1x by to get 1x? You have to have something, right? You can't just do nothing. So what do I multiply it by? Just 1. Because if I multiply 1 by x, I still get 1x. So when we figure out the number up top, then I multiply it by both of the terms in the front now. 1 times x is x, or 1x, either way. And 1 times 3 is 3. And then we subtract. So x minus x, that's gone. Those are cancel. And 9 minus 3 is 6. This is your remainder. So here's this on top is your polynomial. This is your answer. X squared plus 2x. If you want to write to the first, you can, but it's not necessary. Plus 1, and then plus, now we have to do our remainder. 6 over x plus 3. Okay, let's try another one. I know they seem crazy. This is one of those things that's like, what, when we start it, but the more we do and just practice and repeat, it does get easier. So the thing you're dividing by, n plus 2, goes in the front. And then I should be using appropriate dividend and divisor, but n cubed plus 7n squared plus 14n plus 3. So remember, it's critical to check n to the third. If it starts with an n to the third, does it have every single exponent all the way down? Make sure that it doesn't skip. So 3, 2, 1, constant. We're good. Okay, so our first step, we only look at the first term and the first term. They both have a coefficient of 1. What would I need to multiply 1n by to get 1n cubed? They both have a coefficient of 1, so it would just be 1, and then n to the second. I have one of them here. To get 3 of them, I need to multiply by 2 more. Once you get that number on top, you're going to multiply it by both of those terms in front. So n squared times n to the first is n to the third, and we line it up under the other term with the same exponent so that we're going to be able to subtract straight down. N to the second times 2 is 2n to the second. And then we subtract. So n cubed minus n cubed is 0. Those are gone. 7n squared minus 2n squared is 5n squared. So then we bring down our next term, and we're going to do that same thing again. Okay, so I look at only the first term and only the first term. What do I multiply 1n by to get 5n squared? So what do I need to multiply 1 to get the 5 would be 5. And then right now it's n to the first. I want to get n to the second, so I need to multiply it by another n to the first. Okay, once we have our number up there, we multiply 5n times 1n. So 5 times 1 is 5. N to the first times n to the first. When we multiply, we add exponents. So n to the first times n to the first is n to the second. 5n times 2 is 10n. And then subtract. 5 minus 5 is 0. So those are gone. 14 minus 10 is 4n. And then we bring down the 3. Okay, so we look at the first term here and the first term here. What do I need to multiply it by to get 4n? And that is a 4. 4 times n is 4n, and 4 times 2 is 8. And we subtract. Excuse me. 4 minus 4, 0. Those are gone. And 3 minus 8 is negative 5. So when we write our answer, it's this polynomial, n squared plus 5n to the first plus 4, and then our remainder, so minus, or you could write plus negative, minus 5 over n plus 2. Okay, so we're going to move on to some things that have some like little differences. Those two both were very similar. And so there's a couple of other things that I want to point out to you. Hang on one sec, sir. So for this first one, notice that when we divide, this first one it skips. So when I go to set this up, a minus 5 into a to the second, it skips the a to the first. There's no a to the first. These are not allowed to skip. If it skips, you will get it wrong. Okay? You cannot skip a term. So since it skips the a to the first, we need to put like a placeholder in there. How many a to the firsts are there? There aren't any of them. So there are 0 a to the first terms. And that's because when I do this step up here, I'm going to need something to line it up under. So a squared plus 0 a to the first minus 28. And now it's just like the ones before. So this would be a great place for you to pause it and see how it goes. We've done a couple together, see how far you can get, and then you can resume the video and kind of check on your progress. So we're going to look at first term and first term. What should I multiply a to the first by to get a to the second? That would be a to the first. The next part is the next step is to multiply. So a to the first times a to the first is a to the second. And a to the first times negative 5 is negative 5 a to the first. So see how I needed that 0 in there so that I had something to line it up under so that I can subtract. Because our next step is to subtract. A squared minus a squared is 0. 0, this is going to be minus negative, right? So when we subtract a negative, that turns to plus or adding. So I get 0 plus 5a is 5a. And then bring down the negative 28 or minus 28. So now we do it again with this one. What do I multiply a to the first by to get 5a to the first? Well, the a to the first are already the same. I just need the 5. So I'm going to multiply it by 5. And then we distribute. 5 times a is 5a. And 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. And we subtract. 5 minus 5 is 0a, so those are gone. Negative 28, subtracting a negative turns that to adding. So negative 28 plus 25 is negative 3. So our answer is a plus 5 minus 3 over a minus 5.